What's going on, guys? MariK here, back with episode 9 of our History of the Dragon Ball Super card game mini-series. Up now, we have the World Martial Arts Tournament Theme Booster number 2. This set was a huge upsetting of the competitive meta. So many people, and I mean so many people, and a lot of people that are, I won't say professionals, because I think that's dumb as hell to say, especially for like a trading card game, but people that were quote-unquote known for one reason or another, some of which had really no reason to talk, but I'm not going to get into that, trashed this set. So, the majority of people were saying that nothing in this set was going to be competitive, nothing in this set was going to affect the meta or be viable, and holy Zeno, were they wrong. There were so many cards in this set that completely changed the format. There are cards in this set that now are still being effective in the competitive environment. We're going to take a look at all these cards. We're going to go over what was fantastic then and what is still fantastic now, besides just the complete lore of this set and the beauty of the SPRs. Up first, we had Red, which brought an insanely powerful, although laughable leader in some ways. It also brought one of the most powerful Link duos in the entire set. There was some really cool thematic cards in this set as well. It was really a powerful color in the Theme Booster 2. This is where we got our first Hercule leader, and I gotta be honest, the fact that we got a Hercule leader before we got several other characters was just absolutely insane. Although we did get some other leaders where you're going, wait, why do we have this when we don't even have this? For example, Piccolo. It took us 4 sets to get a Piccolo leader. That's insane. This leader, though, was absolutely just bonkers to play against. The draw power was insane. His activate battle on both sides was just phenomenal. You got your combo. If you comboed a card, you got to draw a card. You can only do it once per battle. Not once per turn. Once per battle. So, when he attacked, this ability triggered. Every time your opponent attacked him, this ability triggered. Now, this leader was only 5,000 on the front and 10,000 awakened, but you were comboing every turn, so it was almost as if it didn't matter. It was kind of just, it was weirdly irrelevant in a way. But, so this brought about a lot of deck strategies where you were playing cards to combo, such as the Double Shot Vegeta, or the GT Goku, and after set 5, the Villainy Cell. The cards that, when you comboed with them, you got to draw a card, it gave 10,000 power, so you're drawing on top of the draw from the ability. It was just wild. This leader was easily one of the most influential cards in the entire set, as far as reshaping and defining the competitive environment. Now, since this set focuses on the Link duo cards, we're going to be going over them in pairs because they go together, and obviously you need one to get the other's ability. So the first one was Secret Treaty Hercule and Secret Treaty Android 18. This was an interesting combo because not only did it give it gave us a one-drop Android 18, it gave us a different colored Android 18. Now, were you really going to run this with the Android archetype? Probably not. I toyed around with it a little bit. It was interesting, but it only really gave you 8 red cards, and there wasn't really a lot of good red support that you could use with the Android 17 leader. So ultimately, I scrapped the idea. But you were able to combo with it in rest mode, and when you got to choose a World Tournament card in your battle area and switch to rest mode to draw a card, and if it was the 18, you got to draw another card. Not really that big of a deal. Again, I liked the idea of running it with the Android 17 leader, because then you could play one, and then on turn 2, you could play the other, and you could kind of cheat like extra draw power. But again, like there was just no reason to play red because there was no support that you could possibly take advantage of for red. All of red support is specific to like a specific trait or just an archetype in general. Like you couldn't use any of the good negates or any of the good extra cards because they all require your leader to be a specific type of leader. Up next we had Heroic Duo Videl and Heroic Duo Son Gohan. The Videl was infinitely more playable than the Gohan. It was a one-cost counterattack, negated the attack, you got to play it, and it gave you a body, basically. It was a negate that gave you an extra 5k that you could use towards combo. If you had the Gohan, it gained 9,000 power, making it 10, but most of the time you didn't. Now, if you're running a red deck specifically, you could run the Gohan, and when you played him, you could KO 10k or less, and then you would have the 10,000 Gohan and a 10,000 Videl, give you a little bit of extra battle potential. Now, I didn't really see a lot of people play the Gohan as much, and with one of the leaders in the World Tournament, they didn't have specified colors, so you could kind of just do whatever you wanted. But the Videl was just infinitely more playable than the Gohan. Then we had one of my favorite link pairs. It was Tiny Rivals Trunks and Tiny Rivals Son Goten. This was a really cool one. If you played yellow, you could play Shugesh and cheat one of them out and then play the other one to get them out on the same turn. But what was really cool about them is how well they synergized together. So the Trunks had critical, and if you had the Goten in play, it gained double strike and 5,000 power. So 20,000 double strike crit. That's damage. The Goten had barrier, and if you had the Trunks in play, he was 20,000 double strike. So more or less, you wanted to keep the Trunks, or keep the Goten in active mode, attack with the Trunks to either do damage or push your opponent to combo out of it. Now, the other cool thing about this is that they were both the same power, so not only could you play them, but you could also use them for Gotenks as well if you wanted to do Union Fusion. Really cool link pair. I don't think it saw a whole lot of play, just because there were other colors that had better stuff, and again, it was harder to get them both on the board, unless you were running a yellow leader and you wanted to Shugesh, but it was definitely one of the cooler pairs, with just like abilities that really synergized off of having both of them on the board. Then we had Dark Duo Babidi and Dark Duo Dabura. I really liked these ones, and they had a cool kind of villainesque ability. So the Babidi had barrier, and when you played him, if your leader was red, you got to take a 15 or higher battle card and switch it to active mode. So like kind of cool, but didn't really do a whole lot, especially because you had to play him on turn 3, and so what were you really going to have that you could switch to active mode? Like, there just wasn't a lot of... It didn't seem like there was a lot of time to really take advantage of his ability. The Dabura, on the other hand, was really cheeky because he gained barrier if you had the Babidi in play, and when you played him, you got to warp 2 cards in your opponent's hand, and they stayed warped as long as he was on the field. Really cool, kind of cheeky-esque thing to do, especially like later on when you could combine this with the Foreseeing Hit. That was a gross, disgusting combo to rip 4 of your opponent's cards away. Now, granted, you had to be able to have the energy for it, but if you could do it later on in the game, it almost guaranteed that you won the game, to rip 4 cards from your opponent's hand and see what they had left to actually defend themselves with. Now, this right here was pretty much the pride and joy of the World Tournament set. Out of all of the pairs, this was the most powerful. It was not my favorite. It probably would be like second favorite for sure, though. You had Supreme Showdown Vegeta and Supreme Showdown Son Goku. The super rares already looked really awesome, but the SPRs, just the way the foil made the color pop, it just, like, these images do not do the cards justice at all. Both of these cards were 25,000 and Triple Strike. And they both had the permanent that gave them 10,000 power if the other card was in play. This is not when it's played. This is not just your turn. This is an always active ability. Now, when you played the Vegeta, if your leader was World Tournament, which you had 5 leaders. They were all very decent at best, or at the least. You could place a battle card, in your drop area, and your opponent couldn't activate blocker for that entire turn. Now, when you use that ability, you can play the Supreme Showdown Goku from your hand for no cost. So, you would have like one of your many 1-drops, and then pop it. Your opponent can't stop your attack with blocker. You can still negate, of course. But then you've got 2 35,000 triple strikes bearing down at you. That's before combo power, which is insane. So you had to have negates. You had to have open energy until later on, of course, when we got our sparking negates. Or if you're running like Lineage or Namekians, I guess. But this card was insanely powerful. This was one of the most played pairs because this is just such a powerful finisher. And if they can't kill one of them, then on the next turn, you're just going to do it again. And it got so ridiculous having to deal with these. And that's one of the reasons why I always advocate having some form of board control. Some form of, whether it be an extra card, whether it be just a battle card's ability. That's why so much I would be siding, if not main decking, Mysterious Warrior, Mass Saiyan. Because having something for board removal is detrimental. It's not really something you can go, well, maybe I'll side deck. No. It's almost something that if you can find a way, you have to have it in the main deck. And we're getting more cards now that kind of help out with that, especially with the release of Set 7. But cards like this is the reason you have to have something to get cards off your opponent's board. You can't just have it waiting in the side deck, ready to side in Game 2, when you're going to get your ass handed to you in Game 1. Then we got a little bit of support for, like, the Babidi archetype from all the way back in Set 2 in Union Force. We got Pui Pui, Magician's Lackey. We got Razor's Edge Yakon. We got Tainted Power Spopovich and Yamu. We got Babidi Spaceship. All of which were cards that kind of either, supported the archetype or were thematic with the archetype. Obviously, Pui Pui was kind of just there. He was a 2-drop red crit, but, that's it, really. He was just there to be thematic with the rest of the Babidi stuff. Then we had cards like Razor's Edge Yakon, which was kind of interesting. It was really cool how it kept to the lore of what happened with Yakon's fight against Goku, because he gained 5,000 power for every time there's a card placed underneath him. And when your opponent attacked with one of their cards, not even against him, they just had to attack, you put a card from the top of your deck underneath him. When it hit 5 cards, he basically blew himself up, like he did in the anime. Easy to exploit, and I really didn't see much benefit that you were getting out of it. Sure, it was a card that kind of got bigger, but it eventually, imploded on itself, and it was really easy to get around that and just kind of kill him off in 2 turns without having to actually touch him. Now, Yamu and Spopovich, on the other hand, were much better. A 3-drop, similar to the one in Set 2, I believe. I think he was also a 3-drop. However, this one says, when you play this card, you choose up to 1 card in your battle area, and you place up to 5 cards from the top of your deck underneath it. So not only do you get to do it all in one go, instead of having to do it, several times from the Babidi leader, or just other cards in general, and you got to do up to 5. So if you only needed 3, you did 3. If you only needed 1, you did 1. You didn't have to do all 5. So a really cool card that supported that. Also a cool card that if you wanted to think outside the box, you could run it with Majin Buu. Just think about it for a second. Majin Buu is blue and red. This card is red. Now if you play a heavier blue build, it's going to be a little harder to take advantage of that just because he does require 2 red specified energy. But if you're playing more of a red Buu deck with blue in there for support, like Ultimate Evil or Dawn of the Rampage, you could run this in there. You could even use it to fuel the leader's ability. You could use it to fuel to put stuff underneath your bigger Majin Buu cards. If you found a way to cheat Dawn of the Rampage on top of your deck. If you played, say, for example, Time Patrol Trunks, you wanted to add that super combo to your hand, and then there's a Dawn of the Rampage there, or there's a Gohan or something. Just leave it on top of your deck, and then use the ability. Like, it was more cheeky to do something like that, but it was definitely an option, and I tried it. I didn't dislike it. I just felt like it didn't really benefit for 3 energy. Unless you already had the Buu on the board, then it was kind of okay, but at the same time, I'm not going to play a big Buu card if I already can't get barrier on him to begin with. So, but a really cool concept at the very least. And then we had Bobity's Spaceship, which, again, field cards, like, they feel like they should do something when you play them. Some of them didn't, but of course, Planet Vegeta kind of set a standard, because it was one of the best field cards to date. And Bobity's Spaceship, amongst others, didn't do anything when you played it. You just played it, pass. Now, the Activate main, you switch it to rest mode, you got to look at one card from the top of your deck. And if it was Deborah, Puipa, or Yakon, you could add it to your hand. That's it. Like, you just add it here. Why? Why? What is the point? Like, I don't understand it. It's so dumb. I built a Bobity thematic deck. I didn't run Puipui because it was dumb. I didn't run Ryakon because it was dumber. The Spaceship was useless. I did run the Yamu and Spopovich, but it actually benefited some of the Bobity stuff, whereas none of these other cards did. Like, field cards are supposed to kind of benefit and support your strategy. If your strategy is to look at one card from the top of your deck and hope it's something you can add, that's just stupid in my opinion. Then lastly for Red, we got a little bit of generic support, or not really generic support, but more support that you could use outside of the World Tournament set. The first one, of course, being the Hidden Power East Supreme Kai. He was basically a better version of Set 1's Double Strike Champa. He was only a 2-cost, and he had 15,000 power. He gave the Double Strike plus the 10,000 from the combo. But this one, not only did I prefer it, because you get it foil, also because it was Supreme Kai, and I liked the Supreme Kai. He didn't really do a whole lot as far as in the show and anything, but I liked his character, and I would much rather use the Supreme Kai than Champa. I didn't really care for Universe 6, or really any of the universes outside of Universe 7, but that's another discussion. But the biggest thing is him being a 2-cost. So, in the case where the Double Strike wasn't necessary, or just for some reason you needed to be able to play him, you could play him for 1 less energy than you could the Champa. It gave you an extra body to attack with, and that right there can make all of the difference. It can completely change the situation. And so a lot of people started adopting the Kai instead of Champa. And some people did it just because you get it shiny, and we all want to show off our bling. Then he had Mighty Mask powers combined, and this card, they keep making Gotenks support Red Leader specific. I don't understand why. We do not have a red Gotenks leader. We have one Gotenks leader. It is green, and it doesn't support the archetype. The only thing it does that supports the archetype is it says you want to have less cards in your hand than your opponent so you can make them discard. And the rest of the archetype basically says you want to have 4 or less for the Super Saiyan 3 to give the Ghost tokens Double Strike. Now, granted, there are the green Gotenks, and it kind of goes with the theme, but there's no support there. Then we've got the Ghost token combo card from the Ultimate Box that required a red leader. Then we have this card that requires a red leader. This is a super combo. It is a super combo. And it's Mighty Mask. And you can just do so much with this card, but your leader has to be red. And instead of getting the draw, you get to discard a card and add a Goten and a Trunks to your hand. But again, a red leader. Why a red frickin' leader? There's no reason behind it. Like, sure, there's some red leaders you could use that you're like, oh, well, I can do something with this, but you shouldn't have to. We should have a Gotenks leader that, granted, I'd rather have it be blue. Not only because majority of the decks I play are blue with some green and yellow splashed in and just like red Vegito for red, but also because I much prefer the blue Gotenks support that we get in Miraculous Revival, which we'll get into that, when we do that video. But at least give us a red Gotenks leader to take advantage of this card. Like, our leader for this set could have been Gotenks instead of Hercule. And that would have been so much different. Now, granted, people would have been upset. Well, if they never knew, then, But some people like the fact that we got another Hercule leader. So, we actually have 2 Hercule leaders. Before we got a lot of other characters and leaders. And even now with the release of Set 7, some characters people love still don't have a leader, but Hercule has 2. Fantastic card, though. I love the super combo. There's not really a good leader to kind of take advantage of it with. Now, while blue was not as powerful this set as some of the other colors, red specifically seemed to be the most powerful. Blue had some fantastic support that didn't actually care what color your leader was, as long as it was World Tournament. A lot of the colors kind of say, hey, if your leader is a insert color World Tournament leader, whereas a lot of the blue stuff didn't care. As long as your leader was World Tournament, it was good enough. And that gave way to a lot of World Tournament decks using a lot of the pairs in this, in the blue color with some of the other leaders. Some people ran it with the Hercule leader because it was so abusable. Some people ran it with the black leader. There was just different options you could take, and it's because the blue stuff had no restrictions on it, but was still pretty powerful. Unfortunately, our leader for blue, which was Oob Unknown Power, was not nearly as powerful as, say, the Hercule leader. On the front side, he had Set 3 Syndrome, and on the Awakened side, you got to choose a card in your life, add it to your hand, which is not as useful once you're already awakened. And then you could bounce an opponent's battle card to their hand, and he gained 5,000 power. Like, it just was extremely underwhelming. Literally the only thing it had going for it was a blue leader, and that you could use Unyielding Spirit Trunks with it. It did, however, have a really dope extra card that supported the leader specifically, and so that was also maybe a reason to run the Oob leader, but compared to the other leaders, it was just a little lackluster. The first link pair in blue was Scuffle Time Sun Goten and Mr. Buu. Now, because he was Mr. Buu and not Majin Buu, he did not get to qualify as Majin Buu for some of the card effects that we had in previous sets that specifically called for the character Majin Buu. Now, this was almost a completely different character, kind of like Goku GT is not actually Goku. This was one of those... It was one of those pairs that at the time was not terrible, but wasn't really used a whole lot. It's been used a good bit more in more recent times, but it wasn't terrible. You got to get energy back to active mode. You got to give Goten 10,000 extra power. Buu got to bounce a battle card to your opponent's hand, and it didn't care what color leader you had. It didn't care how strong the battle card was you were going to bounce back to their hand. So it was definitely not a bad pair. It just wasn't as widely used then as it has been in the more recent competitive format. Then up next for blue, we had Awkward Situation Trunks and Otakotsu, and this card just creeps me the fuck out. Like, it was cool to kind of have a Trunks, even though it wasn't featured Trunks, but this was just, it was all kinds of weird. It made the end of Dragon Ball just weird. But the cards themselves were pretty damn powerful. For 2 energy, you got to play the Trunks. And if you had Trunks in play, then you could play Otakotsu. And then you could use Trunks' ability to put him at the bottom of your deck. And then KO one of your opponent's battle cards. Now, since it went to the bottom of the deck, it meant you could re-search him out over again or draw back into them, and it's a really nice combo. You just had to leave the Trunks in active mode. If they KO'd the Trunks, then it kind of botched that strategy. The only downside is it was good board removal, but there was no way in hell you were going to finish your opponent off with this. At most, you were going to play the Otakotsuki, attack a battle card. You might have to leader if you wanted to do the life damage, and then blow something up. But there was neither of them had double or crit, or it was not a good finisher play, but it was definitely an early game board removal play. Then we had Begrudging Respect, Vegeta, and Piccolo. These cards were really cool, and I liked them a lot. Especially the art just looks really cool with having the two anti-hero characters that went from becoming villains to becoming heroes and becoming two of Goku's closest friends, duking it out, and actually being able to see that they had respect for each other and that they weren't, that Vegeta wasn't a piece of shit at that point after they had finally defeated Boo and he, stopped being an asshole to Goku. The Piccolo and the Vegeta both had barrier. The Piccolo was a 2-cost. They said if Vegeta was in play, he gained blocker. When you played him, if you placed a card in your energy during your charge phase and you had less than your opponent, you got to place one of their energy in the drop. So if they were playing a ramp deck, this Piccolo had a really good ability. Now, what I liked using it for was to side deck it for ramp decks or stuff like that in Namekians. Since he is a 2-cost, you could play him and cheat him out with Planet Namek. It also gave you a little splash of blue in the deck. So if you wanted to run green-blue Namekians, maybe you wanted to play Whis' Coercion or Sensu Bean, the Piccolo was also a good option so that you could play him if your opponent was started trying to ramp up and get more energy than you. The Vegeta, on the other hand, was not as playable. If your leader was World Tournament and Piccolo was in play, your opponent had to take 2 cards and place them on top of their deck. So kind of putting them back a little bit as far as card advantage, as far as drawing into any useful support. But the Vegeta had to have the Piccolo on the board. The Piccolo did not give a shit. And so that's why I liked to run it with Namekians, because you could just splash it in there and still be able to get the ability. While the Vegeta's ability was nice, again, these were just 2 cards that both had barrier and didn't do anything offensively, and therefore wasn't really a good strategy to kind of be a finisher or even a pseudo finishing combo at best. Then easily the most used and abused Link pair is Test of Strength, Son Goku, and Oob. They're both 3-cost, 15,000 power, kind of like the tiny rivals Goten and Trunks. However, these two actually played off of each other instead of their abilities taking advantage of each other's presence. The Goku had Double Strike, the Oob had Crit, and when you played the Goku with a World Tournament leader, you got to play an Oob from your hand for no cost, and they both gained an additional 5,000 power. When Oob was played, you got to choose 2 battle cards in your opponent's battle area with 20,000 or less, and put them on the bottom of the owner's deck. So, you got out 2 battle cards while taking away 2 of your opponent's battle cards, and then the 20k double and the 20k crit. Easily one of the most powerful pairs, and really only second to the Goku and Vegeta power from the red color. I will say, however, that this one was much more usable and had a lot more playability both in and out of the World Tournament set. This pair is also great because it didn't care which World Tournament leader you used, so if you were running a red-blue deck, you were going to go with Hercule. If not, you were probably going with, and more than likely going with the black leader, just majority of the time anyways. Then we had Pan, Proudest Daughter, and Hercule, Proudest Grandpa. Really cool kind of theme for the SPRs. However, it was nowhere near as badass as the Showdown Goku and Vegeta. These cards were pretty great, though. The Hercule had barrier, And when you had Pan played in your battle area, you got to draw 2 cards, and then at the end of the turn, you got to choose one of your energy and switch to active mode, so you had some defense there. The Pan, on the other hand, she had dual attack, and if your leader was Blue World Tournament, so it had to be Oob for her ability. And you had the Grandpa Hercule. She gained 10,000 power and double strike. Not really a super pair. The Goku Oob combo is infinitely better, and probably should have been the SPR as well. And even so, like, you were better off, instead of running this for a finishing combo, the Goku Vegeta Showdown was just much more powerful. And granted, we did get a Videl that kind of really supported this and made it much more playable and a little more viable. That wasn't until it was much too late for this set for it to really matter a whole lot. It did well initially, but kind of quickly died off in popularity, and then these 2 cards their prices kind of settled back to where they were. Then for support, we had Awakening Talent Pan and Shocking Latent Ability. This was an extra card that only worked if your leader was Oob, and it basically was a super combo. You gained 10,000 power, and you got to draw a card, and so it worked identically to running the Unbreakable Son Goku from the GX starter deck. Then we had Awakening Talent Pan, who was much more of a support card, since you could play her in anything that was running blue. And you got to have the same ability as the Crit Trunks and Gohan. You got to take a card from your life and add it to your hand to give the 10,000 power. It didn't gain crit, however, and it went back to your hand at the end of the turn. So, kind of like a little bit of self-awakening with a little bit of protection. Although, again, I don't really feel like it was needed, but it's kind of, I guess they felt blue was already too powerful of a color, and they didn't want to give us one of those one-drop life-taking crit monsters and it actually be blue. Green was actually my favorite color of the World Martial Arts Tournament set, and it's for a few reasons. One, I liked the hand control theme that the color provided, but I also liked a few of the Link combos. Now, I did like the Goku Oob from Blue, but it was still technically Dragon Ball Z, but it was kind of like the in-between Dragon Ball Z and GT, and I didn't really care for that. So obviously Red would have been my choice. However, a buddy of mine, he wanted Red from the case we got, and I wanted Green anyways for the SPRs, so I was perfectly okay with that. Green just had a lot of cool support that I liked, and the Link pairs were pretty good in my opinion. I did enjoy running a green deck during the time that everybody else was running red and blue and yellow during the World Martial Arts Tournament era. One of the reasons was that I liked the leader stopping Power Son Goku. I actually wish that the front side was the awakened art, because that would look so much cooler as a foil. Unfortunately, again, this leader had set 3 leader syndrome, but on the awakened side, he had pretty cool abilities. When he attacked, he got to gain 5,000 power for the turn, and once per turn, when he KO'd one of your opponent's battle cards, he got to switch back to active mode. So he was a leader that was good at killing your opponent's battle cards, whilst you had your battle cards to either get rid of their hand or to be able to get rid of their battle cards. The first Link pair for Green was Trusting Relationship Kami and Popo. Kami was a blocker, and if you had Popo in play, he gained barrier as well. Popo, on the other hand, just said when you played him, you got to choose the Kami and add it to your hand. Now, if it played the Kami, it would be so much better. But because it just added Kami to your hand and playing him didn't accomplish anything except for the fact that he was a barrier blocker, it just was seemed to defeat the purpose. And so there really wasn't much to it. Now, since the Kami was a 2-drop, I really had the idea of kind of mixing him with Namekians to kind of take advantage of his abilities, but also be able to play him off of Planet Namek. However, for whatever reason, and I guess because at this point they didn't want a card to have more than 2 traits, but this Kami is actually God/World Tournament, so he doesn't even have the Namekian title. that prevents him from being played with Planet Namek, of course, and it kind of ruined the synergy there to the point that I was like, yeah, you know what, forget this. This pair's completely garbage. At least if he was Namekian, he could have been played. You could play him for 1 energy via Planet Namek. He'd be a 10k blocker for 1 energy, which is not too bad. And then you could even... he'd even have barrier. But without that, like, there was no point. And this kind of seemed like a really shitty pair, especially when there were so many better blockers you could play, or even just play negates instead. The second pair was Tien Shinhan and Mercenary Tao trading moves. This was a really fun pair to play. Now, you didn't get to play them as early because one was a 3 cost and one was a 4 cost. However, the Tien did have barrier, and his once per turn said you could choose a Tao in your battle area and KO it. And if your leader was a green world tournament, see again, this one had to be green, whereas some of the blue stuff didn't have to be a certain color. You got to switch him to active mode, and he gained plus 5,000 power and double strike for the duration of the turn. The Mercenary Tao, on the other hand, had double strike, and when you played him, your opponent had to choose 3 cards from their hand and place them in the drop area. So you pretty much played the Tien, kept him alive. Next turn you drop the Tao, they drop 4 cards. Tao attacks, Tien attacks, Tien uses his ability, blows up Tao, gets to attack again, and that right there is 5 damage already. And then, I didn't picture it here, but if you played Best Buddy Chaozu as well, just comboing him, you got to choose the Tien and switch it back to active mode. Now, he did cost 1 combo power to play, but if you were to have these in play and then start having free energy, so you played Tien turn 3, General Tao turn 4, and then turn 5 you just went all in with both of them, you could combo a Chaozu or 2, and he would keep getting to attack with double strike over and over again. Then we had one of my favorites, Fateful Reunion, Goku and Chi-Chi. I really just liked the art on these cards with the foiling and the colors. It just looked really freaking cool. But I also liked this particular part of Dragon Ball because it was the one time that you actually saw Chi-Chi being this like sweet and innocent person. Of course, this is before Goku goes, "Who are you again?" And then she gets mad, and she's just mad at him for the rest of their marriage. Goku done fucked up one time, and Chi-Chi never let it go. Now, the Chi-Chi was a 2 cost with barrier, and when a Goku was played, you had to choose one of the Gokus, and you gave them both 10,000 power, and you got to draw a card. So, what I liked to do was play a Chi-Chi, and then next turn play a Chi-Chi, next turn play another Chi-Chi, then drop a Goku, and when you played the Goku, you got to choose an opponent's battle card and KO it, and they gain 10,000 power for the duration of the turn. So then, like, when you played him, each of your Chi-Chis could trigger. They would all give him 10,000 power. He'd give himself 10,000 power, and you'd have a couple of Chi-Chis swinging for 20k, and a Goku with double strike swinging like 50 or 60. Really just a kind of ridiculous OP kind of move. There wasn't any, like, strategy to it. It does suck that you had to wait to get the Goku out, but it gave you a couple turns to get a Chi-Chi or 2. Otherwise, there was really no better way to play it outside of running ramp, which just wasn't desirable at all. Now, the cool thing about this pair is your leader does not have to be a world tournament leader. Doesn't even care what color it is. And I had a cheeky deck where I had this pair in the deck with a certain leader, and I thought it would be kind of fun. I never did get around to trying it, but I don't know. I like this. I like this Link pair, even though it is not competitive or meta in any particular way. Then we had my all-time favorite Link pair from the set. It's Destined Conclusion, Hero, and Piccolo Jr. Now, if you don't remember Hero, or you don't know who the hell he is, the character itself was irrelevant, but it's actually Kami in control of Hero, and that's why he's also got the God trait on the card. Now, the SPR art on these were just really cool. I loved the Piccolo especially, and the way they did SPRs in this set. While they didn't have the kind of foiling that we all prefer SPRs to have. Some of it, like part of it had the awesome foiling, part of it had the weird, like super smooth, slick, glossy part. It still looks really nice. I'm really glad I still have 2 full SPR pairs for it. But this pair was just so fun to play. When you dropped the Destined Conclusion Hero, luckily he, of course, had Barrier. But when you played the Piccolo Jr., if your leader was the Green World Tournament, aka the Goku leader, he gained 10,000 power and crit. So he became 25 crit, and your opponent had to choose 3 cards in their hand and place them in the drop area. And then, of course, you couldn't play Hero's ability for the duration of the turn. I guess to prevent you from stacking the cards together and getting multiple instances where your opponent's going to discard 3 cards. The Piccolo, on the other hand, already had critical, and when he attacked, you got to choose an opponent's battle card and one of yours and KO them. If you KO'd a Destined Conclusion Hero, the Piccolo gained 10,000 power and triple strike. So he was 30k, triple strike, critical, which if that hits, and doesn't kill, of course, your opponent's losing those 3 cards, and that's just before combo power. So if you're comboing out with that too, that's going to do a massive amount of damage, especially after you just made your opponent drop 3 cards because of the Destined Conclusion Hero. Still easily my favorite of the pairs. I still want to make it work, or make it somewhat work. It did pretty well during the competitive format where World Tournament was a thing, but I haven't gotten around to toying with it a whole lot since then, and I really do want to try and see what I can come up with, especially with all of the new hand destruction cards that we got in the Assault of the Saiyans set. Now this time around, green was actually the color to get a lot of generic kind of support, or more or less generic. The Feat Kamehameha can only be used with a green Goku leader, but it could be used with any green Goku leader, bar the green GT leaders, of course. And it gave 15,000 power and critical. Now, it was cheeky to run the Goku leader from set 2, where all he had was double strike. I personally preferred to play it either with this leader, or, to be more specific, I really also enjoyed playing it with the Ultimate Box Universe 7 Goku leader. That was a really fun way to play the Feat Kamehameha card, and I felt like anytime you used one of these green Goku cards, you could always play this card as well. And then, of course, we had the one-drop Goku, which was World Tournament specific, but didn't care what color your leader was. And I liked it just because when you played him, if your opponent had 5 or more cards in their hand, you made them discard a card. So if you got to go first, you didn't get to draw, but you could make it an even playing field because you could play him on your first turn and make your opponent drop a card. If your opponent went first, then you got to go second, you got to draw a card and make them drop a card, which it still gave them the momentum, but it also gave you an extra card ahead of them since you were the one to get to draw, and they had to discard a card on top of that. Then we had the Double Impact Krillin, which for me was one of my favorite cards that came out of green, just because it was a card that KO'd battle cards with barrier. It didn't care about barrier, which was great because I was still annoyed having to play against the Universe 2 deck from the Tournament of Power set. That was not fun. I don't like that deck. Guess who doesn't give a shit about Brienne? Krillin. Guess who talked a bunch of shit about Krillin? Brienne. Brienne ran her mouth during the Tournament of Power about how Krillin had no beauty, and Krillin coming in here double impacting on that bitch's face. And of course this card worked for a lot of other cards too, because not only could he KO cards, but he got around barrier, and he just said, you know what, go ahead and go fuck yourself. And that's exactly what I do with this card. I tell my opponent to go fuck themselves when they play cards that I don't like. Then we had the Piccolo Jr. and the Yamcha the Piccolo Jr. was basically just a 2-drop 15k crit, but you could play him off of the planet Namek, and so if you wanted a little bit more offensive pressure, I would definitely recommend running that card in the Namekian deck over some of the other options you have. The Yamcha was a pretty cool card too. He's a 3-cost 15k with crit, but when you played him, you could choose a card in your life, add it to your hand, and then you also made your opponent discard a card. So you got up +2 on your opponent, and you got to crit them, which meant they were going to lose the card or combo out of it. Either way, it's a win-win for you. And the Yamcha card, it's pretty cool, and I like it, and it also helps you awaken. So there's more reasons of why it's a decent card to use, especially in just any generic deck, than it is to not use this card. Then we had Yellow, which was all about like the very first part of the Dragon Ball series, and I didn't really care for this one, not only because like outside of Bardock and Apes, I don't really care for Yellow, but I just didn't really care for the theme of it either, and this was my least favorite time period in the Dragon Ball saga. We did get some really cool cards. We got some cool link pairs, but overall, the Yellow personally didn't. To me, it didn't feel like it brought a whole lot to the table. The leader, on the other hand, sure as hell did, but I kind of don't count the leader and the deck as really being one and the same as far as comparing what's good and what's not, because you could also use the leader with other decks in general, not just World Tournament decks, whereas World Tournament has to be with a World Tournament leader, and sometimes it would even have to be with a leader of its own color. Then we had Jackie Chun, the mysterious fighter. Unfortunately, had set 3 Sinum on the Awakened side, or on the front side. On the Awakened side, though, when you attack, you gain 5,000 power for the duration of the turn, and any time during battles where that card was attacking a battle card in rest mode, your opponent could not combo. So it's very easy for your leader to be able to KO and take out any of your opponent's battle cards, period. And so I feel like that kind of put some stress on and some pressure on the opponent, because they couldn't really afford for their stuff to be in rest mode because it was just going to die. And since we already had a good bit of support for Yellow with previous sets, and then even in this archetype you had a little bit with the extra card, lets you draw 2, it just was a really kind of fell off. Now, you could use the leader just as generic with anything, because he just attacks battle cards, and your opponent can't combo. So a lot of people were running him with Shugesh and some other support because of Shugesh's ability to be able to play battle cards from your hand. And I guess in a way you could use it with the Goku Jackie Chun support that actually came out in Yellow for this, but at the same time, I feel like it just wasn't necessary. And this leader just kind of worked really well as almost like a freelance leader that kind of just did whatever it wanted to do, versus sticking to one adherence or one type of archetype or play strategy. First up, we had Marshall, Meisters, Master Roshi, and Shen. And I don't know. I didn't particularly care for this combo. They both had barrier, and they both had the same once per turn. You got to choose the opposite one in your battle area, switch to active mode, and draw a card. So I mean, it was decent, like draw power early on, I suppose. But they were really weak battle cards, and you obviously weren't going to be attacking with them. And it just, I don't know, it felt like there was something else that they could make better use of your energy than the silly one-drops like this that just kind of give you a card here and there. I also didn't really care much for the toughened up Chaozu and Krillin pair. Chaozu had blocker, and once per turn, when Krillin was played in your battle area, you got to draw a card, and he gained 14,000 power. That's nice and all, but why? Then we've got the Krillin, who said if Chouch isn't playing your battle area, he gains plus 5,000 and critical. So 20k crit. That's not bad there. What's stupid is the Chaozu doesn't keep the 14k after the end of the turn. What they should have done to actually make this even remotely viable is make him keep the 14,000 as long as Krillin is on the board. That gives you a 15k blocker, so he's actually worth playing, and kind of gave you a little bit more incentive to protect him, so that the Krillin is going to have the 20k in the critical every time you go to attack with him. Then we had Unending Moves, Tien, and Yamcha. This was another one of those pairs that I felt like just didn't really add a whole lot. Thematically, yellow in general in this set, just to me, was the worst color. Yamcha had Barrier and he was 2k, and if Tien was in play, he gained 10,000 in critical, so he stayed at a 20,000 crit, which was nice. The Tien had Barrier as well, and Double Strike, and if you use his ability to KO a Yamcha, you get to draw 2, and then KO one of your opponent's battle cards. It felt like at who knows how much life, but at 4 energy, I don't know, it just felt like a weak play that you could do a little bit earlier with different colors. I don't know, it just giving the Tien, even the Yamcha rather, the power boost and crit is nice, and Tien being able to get rid of stuff off the board, but overall I didn't feel like the Tien was a good finisher either, and so it just seemed more like support. It felt like yellow was too much support and not enough actual substance to the archetype itself. Unyielding Victory, Son Goku, and Jackie Chun were pretty much, really, besides the leader, it was felt like the only legitimate yellow good stuff in the World Tournament set. Granted, the Goku's a 3 cost, and so you weren't going to get this out early on. It just kind of felt like there were a lot more, a lot better link combos than even some of the finishers. Like this one here, the Goku had Barrier, the Jackie Chun had Barrier and Blocker, and the Goku basically got to say, choose a Jackie Chun in your battle area, switch it to rest mode, and if your leader was the Jackie Chun leader, for the duration of the turn, he gained plus 5,000 double strike and triple attack. So he got 3 attacks at 20,000 double strike. Definitely not bad. That's 6 damage coming in. The Jackie Chun had Blocker, and at the end of your turn, you got to choose a Goku and KO it. And if you did, you got to choose an energy and discard and switch them both to active mode. So you'd have an energy for negates and combo, and then you'd have the big Jackie Chun blocker. I don't know that I feel that's necessary either. I guess if you needed the extra energy open, then sure, you would do that. But otherwise than that, you're just going to keep the Goku in play. They both have Barrier, and the next turn, you can just do the same shit all over again. To me, that's really the best thing to come out of yellow this set, and even then, I feel like that was kind of just lackluster compared to all of the other colors in the set. Then lastly, for black, we only had a few cards for the black archetype, but easily the best leader of the set. Far better than Hercule, in my personal opinion. We had the Announcer. He had an ability similar to the Warrior of Universe 7 trait from the World Tournament, where any World Tournament cards had no specified energy cost. Now, you also couldn't include any battle cards in your deck that were not World Tournament. So, for all of you people that try to run Chain Attack Zeno and everything, not allowed. Of course, thankfully, they gave us a super combo for each color that could be ran with this leader. You can run one of each, you run 2 of one, 1 of another, whatever. You can run 4 of one, like I do, because it's just weird to have not a playset of stuff when there's 4 of them in the deck. this was one of the better leaders. Again, of course, because the two of the leaders had set 3 syndrome, and so they were kind of hindered just by their own existence. This leader, on the other hand, once per turn when he played a World Tournament card, you got to draw a card. So he didn't even have to attack, which was kind of more Frieza-esque and kind of annoying, but at the same time, I liked it because I didn't want to have to attack meaninglessly. Now, on the Awakened side, you got to choose 2 of your battle cards, give them 5,000 power each, and then you didn't have that skill for the rest of the game. So obviously you wanted to stay on the front side for the majority of the time. The Awakened side was really only if you needed the extra battle power, and if you planned to actually use his Awakened effect. It was also ironic to point out that the Announcer was a 10,000, 15,000 leader, where Hercule was only 5 and 10,000, but I guess with comboing with that leader, plus all the draw power, probably would have been too unfair. But nonetheless, this was easily the best World Tournament leader, and even if I remember correctly, if I've heard correctly, the Announcer is back and doing some freaky stuff, doing a little bit of competitive, and kind of making a mark for himself in the current format. Now, Black did not exactly get its own archetype, did not really get its own set of cards, its finishers, its links, like the other characters did. Black was literally just the Announcer leader and then some fantastic World Tournament support. So we had the World Tournament Arena that you could only use with the Announcer, but it was a 0 cost to play field card that lets you put it in rest mode, and you got to choose 2 of your battle cards, and they gain 5,000 power for the duration of the turn. Obviously, this was very abusable for every deck that played World Tournament stuff, as long as you're running the Announcer leader. And so cards like the Goku Oob combo that were 20k double strike and crit and bounce 2 cards were now 25k double strike and crit, and it just, the 5,000 makes a difference. It literally makes or breaks a combo or a play, or whether or not your opponent will be able to hold off or just succumb to all the relentless attacks that you're going to throw at them. The 2 Announcer battle cards, on the other hand, one of them lets you look at the top 7 of your deck, add any World Tournament. The other one was a counter-attack card, but you kind of didn't want to play it that way, because if you had 2 or more World Tournament in play, you could play him for 1 energy, and then you would get to draw 2 cards. I feel like a lot of times I did not use him as a negate. I think I rarely ever did, unless I was actually, desperate enough that I had an attack I wanted to avoid being hit with. This was just fantastic support for any and all World Tournament decks, but because they were black cards, they didn't have a specified energy cost, and so you could just run them in any World Tournament deck. The Arena, of course, was specific only to the leader, and even so, like with this field card, because it's a 0 cost, you could just play it, activate its ability, put it in rest, give 2 cards 5,000 each, play another one, and just do it again and again. And when you combine that with the leader's Awakened ability, you can easily give 2 of your battle cards an additional like 20,000 power, and if it was like, Lord forbid, the Showdown Vegeta and Goku pair, who already was 35,000 and triple strike for each of them, that it would just be make it or break it at that point. And so this was just good support. It was just a few good support cards, an Announcer leader, 2 battle cards, an Arena, and all splashable in any of the decks that you might run from this set. As with every other set, the World Tournament set had its own secret rare, and it was Goku and Oob from the very end of the last episode where they fought in the World Tournament. Then Goku's like, look, I just beat your ass. I can make you stronger because you used to be this super unstoppable evil alien that even really I couldn't beat. So I want to make you a badass. And then they fly off into the sky, and Dragon Ball Z quote-unquote ends, and then we have GT. Now, I don't know how I feel about a lot of that, because it was the end of Z, but was it made for the anime, or was it actually in the manga? And then on top of that, like, GT is not official, so was, like, it's not even, where were they going with that? Like, he was going to train Oob, but what was going to happen? How was that going to, I don't know, probably stuff I just shouldn't think about, because there is no actual answer for it. Then we had the secret rare itself, Goku and Oob, Seed of the Future. This card, first of all, because of the ratios for the World Tournament, it also threw off how many secret rares you got. I think we got like 5 or 6, maybe more, of the secret rares just from one sealed case. Like, it was pretty wild. The same thing with SPRs. Like, SPRs wasn't, they were a little more generous with them than Bandai was in previous sets. Now, this card was really dope because he did have dual attack and double strike, but your leader had to be a World Tournament card, and if both energy areas were both 6 or more, you had to reduce him by 2. He became a 6 drop, and when he attacked, you got to choose one card in your opponent's life and energy, place him in the drop. So, kind of like a trimmed down version of the Fused Zamasu from Union Force. I suppose it is good that he had the restriction that your leader had to be World Tournament to be able to reduce his energy. But you could play him without that by just running ramp. So, like, a lot of people were saying that you could play him via the new Zamasu leader. The only thing that requires the World Tournament leader, though, is the energy reduction. So, in theory, you could have the energy and then play him, and you could attack your opponent and do 2 to 3 damage. But at the same time, that's a lot of energy to actually have to get up to. And granted, I do feel like it would be possible, and I may actually try it myself. However, the Fused Zamasu is 1 less, rips 2 extra cards away, and overall is just a much better card in my opinion. So that's going to do it for the World Tournament Theme Booster set. Honestly, I think this was a really fun set. It kind of took everybody by surprise, although some of us were going, no, you guys, it's actually going to be, viable in the next format. And I'm glad that it turned out a lot of it did. Some people even today are still kind of goofing around with Hercule, but not as much. It's definitely more often than not going to be the announcer leader. But awesome support. Green had a great theme to it. Awesome SPRs, same with Red. They all just were great. But I feel like Green and Red, as far as the SPR support, had the better ones. As far as actual support, it was definitely Blue and Red for sure. But let me know in the comments below what you thought of this set. What did you play? What did you find really worked well for you? Again, I played Green for the most part. I also played Blue, a Blue Oob deck. I ran like Zeno buttons and stuff like that. And I played the combo to play Trunks, or Future Gohan rather. I played my super combos, and I played the latent ability too. So I had a lot to combo with. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get the freak out of here now, and we will see you guys in the next video.